2016 has come and gone, and man, what a year it was. I mean, I don't know about you people, but I had a pretty good year despite losing some wonderful and truly talented people, all the disasters that happened in the world, and politics completely going to shit. But hey, on the bright side, I went from 1,000 to 14,000 subscribers and had a change of identity along the way. I did an entire Fire Emblem Fates marathon, Pokemon made a resurgence like no other series, Overwatch, and of course anime was always with me throughout the year. I thought that 2016 was actually a pretty good year for anime as a whole, giving us lots of really great stuff ranging from unique, emotional and heartwarming to downright badass, blood boiling and fist pumping. I mean, I watched a lot more anime this year than I usually do, and sure, I watched some generic stuff, some underwhelming stuff, some stuff I eventually just gave up on, some interesting new ideas, quite a few guilty pleasures, and stuff that was just plain shit. But overall, I think this was a good year for anime, and with this in mind, and because it's practically a lore at this point in the year, I feel the time is now to discuss which anime of 2016 were my personal favourite. Before we begin, I need to clarify a few things. First of all, this is just my opinion, and I'm ranking these anime on how much I enjoyed them, not which ones were the overall best from a general consensus or got the highest score on my anime list. And keep in mind, I didn't see every anime of 2016, so I'm only going with the anime that I watched. Secondly, is that I'm looking at 2016 anime only, so from the beginning of winter 2016 to fall 2016. Thirdly, is that I'm not looking at any second seasons to anime that came out before 2016, so no Food Wars, no Arsenal, and sadly no Iron Blood Orphans. You have no idea how painful this is! And finally, I'm looking at anime series only, not short films like Shelter or feature films like Your Name. And with all that cleared up, it's time to bid farewell to 2016, and what better way to send it off than by looking at the best that anime had to offer this year. And with the lineup we've got for this video, 2016 is most certainly gonna go out with a bang. Izetta the Last Witch. I've always been fond of what-if stories. I find it really interesting to see how different scenarios play out based on established events and how said events are retold in a new light. Like how the Germans were defeated in World War II by a witch flying around on an anti-tank rifle. It's not exactly what I learned in history class, but hell, that sounds awesome! This is the premise of Izetta the Last Witch, and not only is this a really cool idea, but the anime is just as cool, giving us some of the most creative and fun action scenes I've seen in a while, some very strong and likeable characters, a lot of really cool ideas surrounding the subject matter and time period, and an all-around great anime. Because if there's one thing life has taught me, is that retelling the events of World War II will never get old. The story of Izetta is pretty much how I already outlined it. It's set during World War II, this world's Germany is invading this world's Austria, the Princess Fine then discovers, or more specifically rediscovers, the witch Izetta, the last of her kind, and Izetta fights against the Germans in order to keep the princess and her country safe. While a very simple premise, the new take on this historical event is very cool, and I like how they combine the ideas of magic into the narrative and more importantly, the action scenes. If there's one thing Izetta knows how to do, it's the action scenes because hot damn are the moments where Izetta is fighting the German army so much fun to watch, and the way they incorporate her powers into how she uses the various weapons is really awesome. Outside of that, the anime has a lot of strong characters that while not too deep, are very enjoyable and memorable. The anime also does explore some of the more interesting aspects of the Second World War, with things like politics, covering up information, weapons development, and oddly, lots to do with propaganda, so the anime certainly has substance outside of just looking cool. I'll admit this anime isn't perfect since it suffers from trying to cram the story into 12 episodes, and I feel sometimes the anime spends a little too much time seeing the characters relaxing, but overall, I still really enjoyed this anime. Could it have been better? Yes it could, but for what we got, I really liked it, and found it to be some of the most fun I've had watching anime in 2016, because who doesn't love the idea of an adorable redhead witch fighting the German army while riding an anti-tank rifle? I love anime sometimes. My Hero Academia. With every generation of anime, there's that big shonen that becomes hugely popular and both creates and inspires a new legion of anime fans, with My Hero Academia being this generation's shonen. Now I've talked about this anime in the past in Top 10 Gateway Anime, and I've said this anime isn't very original or groundbreaking, instead being an anime that takes everything great about the genre and pushes it to plus ultra, delivering that sense of awe that captivated us the first time we watched anime, while at the same time avoiding all the negatives that come with this genre and just focusing on what it does best. Guess this anime truly is super. I'll be brief when it comes to the summary. This world has people with superpowers, a young boy wants to become a hero but has no powers, meets the world's greatest hero, is given superpowers and thus trains to become the next great hero. This story is nothing new since it's a very basic shonen story, and to be honest, a lot of this anime is filled with shonen cliches, from the characters, to the way it's structured, to hell, even most of the dialogue, which for some could be seen as a negative, and I understand why. However, for me, this anime is filled with all the good cliches and just goes to town with them, as this series gives you that sense of wonder and energy similar to watching Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, Bleach and One Piece growing up. On top of that, My Hero Academia is a very focused anime and only features the best elements of the genre, having loads of great action scenes and exciting moments, but not holding back on the more emotional moments as well as the drama and the struggles of our hero, so you end up with an anime that can be enjoyed by just about anyone and only delivers on the good stuff. Shonen anime will forever be one of the biggest genres in anime, and while yes, they are filled with their annoying cliches, My Hero Academia takes everything that works and gives the audience exactly what they want, and this is the new shonen for this generation to inspire and excite anime fans both new and old. My generation had Dragon Ball Z, the generation after had the big three, and now the torch has been passed to you, Deku. Be strong, young one. We believe in you. ReZero. One of the bigger hits of 2016, ReZero was a breath of fresh air from the traditional anime norm, since to me personally there aren't many anime like ReZero, and I felt this anime had a lot of unique elements and ideas that helped it to stand out and make it really strong. Was it perfect? No, this anime certainly has flaws, but for what it did well, it did really well, and resulted in being one of the biggest surprises of the year for me, and an experience not many anime have been able to deliver for both better and for worse. ReZero follows the story of Natsuki Subaru, a young man who randomly ends up in another world that looks like your typical fantasy style RPG. Oh great, it's going to be one of those anime again. However, unlike those anime, Subaru is otherwise powerless and he learns this the hard way by getting killed, only to start back at the beginning with all his memories intact, and from there, Subaru must try to find a place in this world as well as win the love of his one true waifu, and all the pain that comes with it. ReZero is a very unique show in my eyes, setting notwithstanding, since I really like how it uses return by death as a way to progress the narrative. Not to mention, I like the characters in this series, and there's a real sense of liveliness and community in this anime, though I will admit the story is very slow moving and to be honest, really doesn't go anywhere for the majority of the show, since it's more about following Subaru's journey in this world and his experiences. Speaking of which, Subaru pretty much makes this anime, since he's such an obnoxious and full of himself character for all the right reasons that you can't help but love the guy, plus you feel a real sense of growth from him as the story progresses, since it beats him to the point of no return many times, and to see him come back from all that and triumph over it makes him a very strong protagonist and pretty much the highlight of the series. With every passing year, I always look forward to all the new anime that come out, just waiting for that one surprise that I did not expect, with ReZero being this year's surprise for me. While flawed in regards to the overall narrative, being too dark at times and other elements that don't really add up, what works about this anime is done extremely well and makes this anime one hell of an experience that I feel earns it a place in the 10 best of the year. And before you ask, yes, Rem is best girl. Grimgar, A Fantasy in Ash. And here we have the obligatory trapped in a fantasy world anime trying not to be Sword Art Online but ending up being Sword Art Online anyway, that just floods the industry since the turn of the decade. While this idea has been done to death, by God has this shit been done to death, Grimgar is probably one of the best anime to pull off this concept, since instead of focusing on waifus, over the top action and being a god, this anime has things like drama, atmosphere, emotions, world building, and above all else, character development. Not character development! Yes, character development! The story of Grimgar is, get this, an anime set in a fantasy RPG world where the characters don't know how they got there and now must fight to survive and discover more of the world. Oh, how very original. Yes, Grimgar's setting and premise are nothing new, however Grimgar really focuses on the good stuff and it feels more like a fantasy adventure rather than a typical living inside a video game story, and this is shown mostly through its characters. The main cast of Grimgar are all colourful characters with distinct personalities, and each of them have enough screen time to make an impact and be memorable, but they aren't your typical anime team. For one thing, each of them start out not knowing each other, and they have to learn to work together and work around their issues in order to move forward, which is easier said than done because starting out, these guys suck. Yeah, instead of being overpowered gods, the characters start out very weak and barely able to defend themselves. But it makes the action scenes all the more engaging and the struggle all the more intense, and when they face legitimate danger, you really feel the dread these characters are going through. This is helped by the fact that the story is very slow moving, which may be a turn off for some and I understand why, but I love that this series is so slow moving because it really takes the time to make these characters and this world feel alive, and whenever there's an emotional moment, it hits you so hard and it feels genuine. Not to mention, I love this anime's art style and the music is wonderful too, giving this anime an atmosphere like no other. So yeah, Grimgar is a great anime and one of my favourites of the year, being focused on its world and its characters along with all the drama, tension, emotion and heartwarming moments that come with it. And now I wait eagerly for season 2 to happen. Because it should happen. I hope it happens. Please happen? Mob Psycho 100. It can be very hard to top your magnum opus, and most of the time your other work will seem inferior by comparison. I mean, in my eyes, Shinichiro Watanabe has yet to top his greatest creation, Cowboy Bebop, though this came pretty damn close. And I kind of feel the same way for Mob Psycho 100, since personally I don't think it's as good as One Punch Man, but this anime is still fantastic and has many of the qualities that made One Punch Man great, along with its own unique elements and a lot of really interesting ideas and themes explored here, so while not the best, this baby still stands tall, just not enough to reach 100. Mob Psycho 100 follows the story of Mob, a very average, very plain and otherwise bland boy, with the one unique trait being that he has psychic powers! However, he tries his hardest not to use them and live a very boring and very underwhelming life. How very modest of him. With the help of, and being exploited by his boss Reigen, Mob now fights against espers and other spirits throughout the city, while at the same time being on a journey of self-discovery and seeing how far his ideals can be tested. One of Mob's strongest aspects is easily its humour, as this series is both over the top silly, but also very subtle and dry at the same time, leading to many funny moments and crazy looking visuals, and I mean crazy. Speaking of which, can I just say this anime looks fucking gorgeous? The way in which it captures the look and feel of the source material as well as some very abstract and otherworldly imagery is truly a sight to behold, and easily the best part of the anime, especially in its action scenes. But that's not to say there's no substance to this anime, since Mob Psycho 100 is actually a very clever anime as it tackles many social issues in society as well as issues relating to adolescence and the ideas of individuality. Not to mention the anime also has a nice mix of over the top silliness but also knows when to get dark and gritty, and the anime as a whole is very well written, well animated and well put together series. When you come out of the gate with something as awesome as One Punch Man, it's going to be hard to live up to those expectations when you make something new. But even if Mob isn't as strong as its predecessor, it's still very much its own thing and a really great anime, and I look forward to seeing what else will be adapted from the genius that is One. Bungou Stray Dogs. Have you ever watched an anime and it feels very similar to another anime you've watched? In this day and age, the answer is a straight up yes, and it shows that the industry is becoming pretty lazy. But depending on the anime in question, this can be a really good thing, and that's pretty much my reaction to Bungou Stray Dogs. To me, this anime has a story and setting of Darker Than Black, but the tone and art style of Durarara, and thus I refer to it as Darker Than Durarara. But considering those are some A-grade anime and this anime has enough unique elements to give it its own identity, I believe we have found yet another A-grade anime. Bungou Stray Dogs is set in a world where certain individuals are known as gifted, and have otherwise supernatural powers and use them for different reasons. The story follows Atsushi Nakajima, a lone orphan with no self-esteem and just happens to be one of the strongest gifted around, who runs into the Armed Detective Agency, and ends up joining the agency in order to help fight against the syndicate group of gifted, the Port Mafia. Bungou Stray Dogs is an all-around great series, and easily the strongest part of the series are its characters and its humour. Bungou Stray Dogs is filled with a hugely varied cast of colourful characters, each of them with tons of personality, interesting backstories and powers, as well as each of them getting just the right amount of screen time and are just a blast to see every time, especially the man himself, Osamu Dazai. On top of that, this series is filled with a lot of offbeat and off-the-wall humour much like Durarara, which I love, but at the same time it balances this out with a lot of very dark and very emotional moments, making this series both loads of fun and quite the emotional train as well. I also like how the first half of the series is more standalone episodes for each character, whereas the second half is one big story arc, and the series as a whole is just a blast and one of the most enjoyable series I've watched this year. Anime being similar to another isn't something new, and it's steadily becoming more and more common in this industry. But if the anime in question takes the best elements of others and does something new with it, I'll have no complaints. And that's pretty much how I feel with Bungou Stray Dogs, being one of the most unique, enjoyable and downright awesome anime of the year, and forever will be known as Darker Than Durarara. Drifters. Hey, you all remember Hellsing Ultimate, right? Yeah, it was awesome. Vampires, ghouls, Nazis and shit was the best. Well, what happens when you take the writer of Hellsing, the animation director of Hellsing Ultimate, and combine it with the plot of the Fate series? You, my friend, get Drifters, one of the most badass animes I've watched all year and something that makes me grin with utter malice and delight every time I watch it. Guess this series is starting to rub off on me. The plot of Drifters is very similar to that of the Fate series, in that the story is about famous warriors and figures of war throughout history, somehow ending up in a world very different from their own. The story follows our main three leads, Toyoisa, Nobunaga and Yoichi, along with many other famous warriors, as they fight it out in order to gain control of the new world as well as defeat the Ents, another group of warriors who are hellbent on the destruction of the world. The premise is very simple, and to be honest the story is just as simple. In fact, until around episode 7 the story doesn't really go anywhere, instead being more focused on the characters establishing themselves in this world and interacting with each other, which can be seen as a flaw to some, but to me, that's the best part of the anime! The characters are what makes Drifters, as they are full of personality and really play up the characteristics of the people they're representing, and the way in which they interact with each other is just pure gold. Honestly, I could watch the main three talk for just hours on end and I would still be just as entertained. Something I also love is how because these Drifters are warriors and warlords, they're some of the scummiest people around and you just can't help but love them for just how merciless they can be. In Drifters, no one is the good guy, and they all have their own plans and secret agendas, and it's amazing to see just how much they influence those around them and use their knowledge and experience to control and conquer the people of this world. On top of that, like Hellsing Ultimate, the action scenes and animation are fantastic and very stylized, the music is kick-ass, the humour is much better implemented and less jarring than Hellsing Ultimate, and from start to finish, this series is one hell of a ride. It may be short on story, but it delivers on everything else, and Drifters makes it feel so good to be bad. Orange. I'm generally not someone who's huge on shoujo anime and I don't actively go out of my way to watch it like other genres. However, the premise for this anime seemed interesting enough and I like to give everything a chance and try something new. And I am so glad I did, because Orange was such a great anime and it made me squeal like I've never squealed before, having some of the most tear-jerking, nose-blowing, both heartwarming and heartbreaking moments in any anime, and just being such a great anime I simply couldn't get enough of it. It really does help to be open-minded towards things. The story of Orange follows a group of high school friends, in particular our main character Nao, who receives a letter detailing the events of what she should and shouldn't do regarding a new student entering the school, Kakeru, the only strange part being that this letter was sent by herself. From the future! Nao and her friends quickly add Kakeru to the group, but after certain events play out exactly as the letter specified, Nao begins to wonder how much of the letter she should follow or whether she should follow her heart. The premise of this anime is actually really clever, since the way in which Nao debates with herself about whether or not to follow the letter feels very genuine, and is made all the more powerful when events begin to change and the letter now differs from what happens in this timeline. Being a shoujo anime, there's a lot of romance in this series, and I'm just going to come out and say it. Nao and Kakeru are just fucking adorable. Every time they're alone together and having a good time, I just squeal like a little girl and enjoy every second of it. Not to mention, I feel the relationship between them is very genuine, and both the good and bad times they have together feel real. Outside of that, the supporting cast is great as well, with Takako being the kick-ass mother of the group, and Suwa being a god tier bro. Orange is also one of the most emotional anime I've seen this year, and whenever there's a tear-jerking moment, you just can't help but get wrapped up in all of it, since this anime just hits you right in the feels. While shoujo still isn't a genre I'm crazy about, thanks to anime like Orange, I've come to appreciate it much more, as this is one of the most feel-good and heartwarming animes ever, and winning the award for making me squeal more than an anime fangirl after seeing Yuri on Ice. 91 Days. I always love it when different parts of the world tell stories that are based heavily on another culture or time period. I mean, I loved what Cartoon Network did with Samurai Jack, and I loved it when anime do things like Hellsing, Black Butler, Baccano, and of course, 91 Days. Setting notwithstanding, 91 Days was a wonderful anime, having a really strong story, lots of memorable characters, a really dark tone and atmosphere, so much emotion and drama the side of a soap opera, as well as being one of my favourite revenge stories ever told. In fact, this could have worked just as well as a live action drama because of the story and setting. Hey man, if Death Note can go live action, I don't see why this one can't either. 91 Days tells the story of a young boy named Angelo, whose family is murdered one night by the Mafia, with himself barely escaping. Jump to years later, and Angelo now seeks revenge by bringing down the Mafia from within, and the story follows his journey as he makes his way up the ranks and slowly takes his revenge from the inside. What makes 91 Days work so well is its story. While this type of revenge plot has been done before, the way it's executed is brilliant, since you see how the actions of Angelo's revenge extend past himself and the members of the Mafia, often affecting those closest to him as well as people who have otherwise nothing to do with him. Needless to say, 91 Days is dark, as there are very few happy moments in this anime, as it makes it clear early on that revenge will not lead to any sort of redemption, and at no point are you rooting for any of the characters, but not because you hate them, but rather that there is no true good or evil. Except maybe this guy. The characters are also a very strong part of this anime, as each one of them is not only unique, but they're also very down to earth and they feel like real people. I also love this anime from a production standpoint, as it looks beautiful, and that soundtrack, oh god, that soundtrack is one of the best I've heard this entire year, and that's not something I say lightly. Adapting a story in a different part of the world can be a daunting task, but it's always cool to see what can come of it, and while 91 Days was certainly a success, being an all-around fantastic anime that is dark, engaging, relatable, and just downright awesome, and it will be remembered for much longer than 91 Days. Before we get to number 1, I just want to do a few honourable mentions. First up is Dimension W. Dimension W was a really cool anime, and I found the premise, characters and ideas to be loads of fun. It just wasn't as great as the others on this list. Next up is Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress. Much like everyone else, yes, the first half of this series is fantastic and I loved every second of it. However, the second half is where things really went downhill, but it still made for a fun time all the same. After that, we have Alderman on the Sky. This was a big surprise anime for me, as I loved how the anime focused on the tactics of war and the soldiers that fight in the battles with some really great characters. The problem being that it lacked scope and it felt a little underwhelming at times, but otherwise it was a great anime. Moving on, we have March Comes In Like a Lion. This anime isn't finished yet, but so far it has been a non-stop train of emotion and is connected with me on a very personal level for both the right and wrong reasons. And finally, there's Yuri on Ice. Honestly, I had no idea I was going to like this anime because I just don't care for ice skating, but thanks to some truly outstanding animation put to beautiful music, a very simple yet emotional story, themes I can relate to and a lot of heartwarming moments, this became one of the higher ranking anime of 2016. Just not enough to reach the top 10. Anyway, with that out of the way, on to the number 1 entry. Erased. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. Those are the first words that come to mind when thinking of Erased, because goddamn, this anime is not only the best anime of 2016, hands down, but one of the best anime I've ever seen and easily one of my top 10 favourite anime, as no other anime this year has made me cry, cheer, smile, laugh and nod in satisfaction as much as Erased has, since this anime just did everything splendidly and reached heights that no other anime this year could, and considering all the other anime I've watched this year and the ones that made it onto this list, that is no easy feat, and it just goes to show how amazing this anime is. The best way to sum up Erased story is that it is a time-travelling murder mystery, with our main character Satoru travelling back through time to his youth in order to stop his classmate Kaio and others from being kidnapped and murdered, in order to prevent a murder that takes place in the future as well. To me, that's already a strong premise for an interesting story, but the way in which Erased tells it in such a simple way makes it so much more impactful, since the anime doesn't tell you X, Y and Z about everything, and some elements aren't fully explained to the audience. But I love that, since it leaves it up to your imagination and it makes it so much more engaging to figure this out for yourself. Also, because of its more simplistic nature, a good chunk of the story is told through its imagery and its atmosphere. Without a doubt, Erased is one of the most beautiful animes I've ever seen. From the art style, to the colour scheme, to the angles, to the unforgettable soundtrack, this is one of the most atmospheric animes ever, and it makes everything in this anime feel so real, and adds so much more emotion and drama into those key moments in the story. That's not to say Erased is just a pretty picture, because the characters are what makes this anime. Both Satoru and Kaio are some of my favourite child characters in anime, and I love the way each of them interact with each other and the relationship they have together, as you want to see them make it through this together so much, and it makes such a cute pair that just, oh, I love these two just so much! The rest of the cast is great too, with Satoru's mum being one of the coolest mums in all of anime, and everything else from the mystery, to the pacing, to the tone, to the music, hell, even the humour just come together perfectly and make one of the greatest anime I have ever seen. And there you have it, Erased is my favourite anime of 2016. Sure, it's a rather predictable entry, and I bet not all of you feel it was the greatest anime ever, but that's fine, you're free to like and dislike whatever you want, but Erased was the perfect anime for me, as it connected with me on a level no other anime has achieved this year, and the way it made me experience all these different emotions was something I will never forget, so much so that Erased is now in my top 10 anime of all time, which is why it takes the #1 spot as my favourite anime of 2016. This has been Blazing Knight. I wish you all a great night, take care, and though 2016 was a hard year for some and probably not going to be remembered fondly, at the very least anime was a high point for this year, with these 10 being the best this year had to offer. Well, now it's time to wait and see what 2017 has in store for us. Okay, let's see what we got. My Hero Academia Season 2, nice. Blue Exorcist Season 2, cool, that's been long overdue. Attack on Titan Season 2, it's about damn time. And what? Hey everyone, thank you for watching today's video. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and a comment, and why not subscribe to my channel in order to keep up to date with when new videos are coming out. For alternate video recommendations, I was pointing to my last video, Top 10 Metroid Bosses, where I count down my 10 favourite bosses from the Metroid series. Next up, I point to Top 10 Gateway Anime, where I look at the 10 anime that I feel are the best at getting people into the genre, and for something completely different, why not check out Free For All Episode 6, where I pit the anime Freezing, High School of the Dead and High School DxD against each other. Hopefully one of those videos will be to your liking. Once again, I thank you all for watching, and a big thank you to everyone that follows me on Amino. You are some of the most wonderful people I've had the pleasure to talk to, and thank you so much for being such awesome fans of my work. Anyway, that's it from me. I'll see you all next time.